Hi, I am Kayla, and I'm currently a junior at Spelman College. I study Spanish and International Studies, and today I will be interviewing Kimberlyn. Hi, Kimberlyn.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome.
That's good. So, can you introduce yourself and tell us where you work and what your job title is?
Yes, so I am Kimberlyn Bolton, and I am the Executive Director of Reimagine ATL.
Nice. And so, what does a typical workday look like for you?
Goodness, it depends on the day. I've actually been very intentional about how I structure my week so that I don't get burned out. So a typical day on Monday is 9:30 meeting with my directors. So we have a directors meeting, which is our leadership meeting to make sure we're all on the same track for the week. And that's when we share out any high level updates with one another. So that's my development director and my director of strategy and impact. And then at 10:30, we go into our team meeting with the full core team. And so that's when we share out our highlights, our challenges of the previous week, and then what we're working on for the upcoming week. And that gives us a chance to get together and see what areas of support are needed, how we can help each other, and just allows us to stay in tune, especially during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tuesdays and Thursdays are when I take all of my meetings. I do my interviews. I do any of the relationship building that needs to be done are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And Wednesdays, I don't take any meetings. That's my time to really strategize and to do some high level thinking and future planning, or do any of the homework I have that my staff or my board needs me to do. Because as an ED, it's so easy to get caught up in the emails and the calls and the meetings and the requests and the permissions. So it's very important that I take a day and I'm intentional to just get work done, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I think that's really, really good to hear that you take time to be intentional. And
Absolutely.
so, what initially drew you to this career path?
Yeah, so my background is in the entertainment industry. I knew as a teenager, I wanted to do three things. I wanted to be a performer, I wanted to work in the music industry, and I wanted to work in philanthropy. And at 33, I've been able to do all of that. So
Wow.
I am a classically trained opera singer. So I've performed throughout the country, around the world, and I still do perform. My first career out of grad school was in the music industry, where I worked with Janelle Monáe for about 3.5 to 4 years. So that was my first career. After
Wow.
that, I launched a creative agency where we did talent and brand development for young artists. And then I had the opportunity to work with Reimagine in 2017. And so I've been with the organization since then. And that was, my venture into philanthropy and the nonprofit community development industry.
Okay. And so, what did it look like to look for a job after graduation? Did you find a full time job in your field right away? I know you kind of spoke to that, but what?
That's a really interesting question. I always talk about my journey is very non-linear
Mhm.
and untraditional. I was a music major at Spelman. And although I had been classically trained since I was about 15 years old, I still had this urge to work in the music industry. However, Spelman didn't have like a music business track or anything. It was very much classical music and Glee Club. I actually joke about majoring in Glee Club. So I had to find it for myself. So what's funny is these full circle moments come around. When I was a junior in college, I actually got connected with my now mentor, who actually got me the job at Reimagine
Oh,
eventually.
wow.
But he at the time, he is a legend when it comes to the music industry in Atlanta. He owned a lot of the clubs downtown where artists used to get their record deals. So like if they had an open mic night, record label execs would come and see them and sign them. And so I started helping him out, and I just started serving and helping wherever he needed. And I ended up running his company for him. And at the time, I realized that we needed more help. And there were other young people like me who wanted to work in the industry but didn't know how to get in. So, as a junior in college, I actually launched an internship program for him. And by the time I graduated from Spelman, I had grown that internship program to about six cities and 50 students who
Wow.
wanted to work in the industry. And so we had different departments around marketing, promotion, artist management, and I was doing that until I graduated from Spelman. I then went on to University of Michigan to get my master's in classical music and opera, vocal performance. And I was focusing on my career as an opera singer. While I was doing that, I had the opportunity to help with Janelle Monáe's production team whenever I had a break from school. Once again, I wasn't getting paid, but I was just volunteering because
Hmm.
I had the opportunity to do so. And I was a gap filler. So I saw any of the gaps that needed to be filled and I just volunteered to help. So I started to create a position. I started to create value for myself on the road, so much so every time that I would leave, Janelle would be like, when is Kim coming back? And they were like, she's in school. She can't. So whenever I had a 3-day weekend or spring break, I was on the road. So much so that I graduated from Michigan on April 30th. And the next day I flew out to New York City to help her with the Bruno Mars Janelle Monáe tour
Hmm.
in 2011. So I worked that. I created a position for myself as the person who managed the VIP and the meet and greets. So when Mick Jagger or Stevie Wonder or Prince wanted to come see her at a show, I was responsible for making sure that they could get in and out without being seen or without any hassle. And so I just started creating value for myself. And when I left, I had to leave that tour because I was doing my own opera tour in France. So I had to leave that early. Upon my completion, I was offered a job with her. So I packed up all of my stuff from Michigan and I moved back to Atlanta, and the rest was history. I think the first tour I did was Katy Perry and Janelle Monáe.
Wow.
And so that's how I got my job. So when you talk about like work applications, job market, I came up during the recession, like
Mm,
I graduated in the middle of the recession. So like a job, and I was a music major. I was a creative. I was an artist. So
right.
what job market are you talking about? So I just created spaces and I hustled because I knew what I wanted to do. And I was very passionate about that.
Hmm. Wow, that's definitely very inspirational and just beautiful to hear, like creating space for yourself and acknowledging like a gap that needs to be filled. I think that's and just to hear your successes, I think that's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Um, and so when it does come to your current occupation, how do you think your high school or college courses have been applicable or relevant? And are there any that you wish you would have taken?
That's a good question. I look at my high school and college experiences, any of my experiences, I look at them holistically. And so I
Mhm.
don't really think about like, oh, I'm not using this class, or oh, I didn't use this that they taught me. Cause quite honestly, like I forget about all of that stuff, the way my memory works.
Yeah.
But I think, I always tell people I had this conversation with my dad who, has a PhD. So he was in school for a while. He says, school, particularly college, increases your capacity for suffering. And, it's a
Mhm.
harsh thing to say, but I think like, when I think about my first career being a personal assistant right out of school, you have to learn crisis management, you have to learn problem solving, like all of these life skills. And I think for me, what prepared me the most for the lifestyle that I lead right now is my ability to do a lot of different things. So as a kid, my mom made sure that I was in a lot of extracurricular activities. So I was in school, but I also was in rehearsals or,
Right.
musicals and things like that. So I learned how to manage time. I learned how to do a lot of things at once. So like even with my career now, my full-time job as ED of Reimagine ATL, I'm still working on projects when it comes to music. I'm still having other entrepreneurial endeavors. I learned how to, I think school and, college and things like that taught me how to manage my time and do a lot of things at once. And then particularly at Spelman, because yes, I wanted to study music and I still had this passion for classical music, but I also wanted to work in the music industry. Going to Spelman and not having that space for me taught me to go out and seek it for myself. So I'm learning to create the life that I want. And I think that's what Spelman taught me, to create the life that I want. And then also what I love about Spelman, what I cherish about Spelman is that it was a holistic education, right? So when you're asking me about college classes, I'm like, courses, what? I'm thinking about my entire experience, the whole woman that they develop mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. They don't just care about your grades, but your entire well-being. And that's something that I've taken on my journey.
Definitely. I can definitely relate to that. Um, and so, would you say that you had any internships or extracurricular activities that prepared you?
Oh, most certainly. Like I said, working with Richard Dunn, who was my first mentor here in Atlanta, really prepared me. Particularly, I always call like Richard's like my big brother slash second father. And I think working with him was really interesting, because I will admit, like, I was like a little soft daddy's girl. And, working for a Black man who was in this industry, like, he coached me like I was playing football, and I know nothing about football, but he really made me like into the sharp businesswoman that I am now, along coupled with a lot of my experiences. So that internship, while it wasn't extremely formal, it was more like, it was informal and I just served. I think like that was probably the biggest preparation. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. Like, again, I told you, it would eventually get me my job at Reimagine. And even as early as last week, it got me a speaking gig. So, I think internships are important, but what's more important is that mentorship where people who
Mm,
are in places that you're not can go and say your name and advocate for you publicly and privately. I think that's what's even more effective than internships.
hmm, that's good to know. Yeah. And so, with that, I think that relates to the next question about like networking. And do you think students know the importance of internships and networking and how these skills may relate to the professional world?
I don't know if young people know the importance of that. But one of the things that we do at Reimagine, we provide at Reimagine, we are essentially an education and workforce development organization for the creative industry. And we do that by providing career exposure, training, and placement within that space. But we do this work from a lens of storytelling, but also
Mhm.
building a network and social capital, because we realize, particularly dependent on the demographic and the students that we're working with, um, you know, we can train you all day, but if you don't have the connections, you don't have the access to the network, then, we haven't done our full job. Just like you can get all the training at Spelman, but if you don't have access to the network of people that can hire you or that can potentially change your life, then it really doesn't make a difference. You're kind of like a lot out there lost.
Right.
And so I think, I don't know if I don't, I mean, you could probably tell me better than me, like if young people know the importance, but that is one of the principles of the work that we do, is making sure that our students are very well connected when they leave. So that looks like one-on-one mentors with executives from Warner Media or anyone in the professional industry, in the creative industry, so that those people can be an evangelist for our young people and for our program at large. And so creating opportunities where our students are immersed with those young professionals, those creative professionals on a daily basis, is really important for us. And then the subject of internships, and I'll be quite frank, is very tricky,
Mhm.
because especially when you talk about paid versus unpaid internships, right? Because we all know that not everyone can afford to do free internships. And so
Right.
the internship space creates a lot of barriers, when it comes to entry points into the industry. And so for us, as Reimagine, we don't believe in unpaid internships. Like, that's just a principle for us, because we understand the barriers that exist for that.
Mhm. Definitely. And I think just to speak to what you said about maybe me knowing a little bit more about that. I think from personal experience, they have at Spelman had they have plenty of opportunities where we can build a network, and they have different panels and events where we do learn about the importance of building a network and building a team and building. I think Spelman alone in itself is like a place where you do build connections with people, and I think that is something that is instilled in us as Spelman students. So I think yes, that is something that as a student I definitely have learned to appreciate and look for. Um, so yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, um, what advice would you give to current students who are about to graduate?
Relax. Relax. It's so funny. A friend and I were talking about this over the weekend. I think, and he went to Morehouse, and I think like when we graduate from these schools, right, these prestigious schools, we are being prepared to take over the city and take over the industry and make a choice to change the world. Shout out to Spelman Glee Club. Um, but I think with that comes a lot of pressure, right? And it's like I have to get this certain job out of school, and of course financial pressures are one thing, but there's a societal pressure, right? I graduated from this school, so I need to have this kind of job. Like you're literally, one thing, again, I can say this at 33, like you're 22 when you come out of school, right? 23, you don't know anything. And I
Mhm.
think the advice that I would give is just relax. It's okay to take like a smaller, non-cool, uncool job while you're learning. Give yourself grace, give yourself space. I would also encourage my Spelman sisters or anyone graduating from college to use the time to learn, ask a lot of questions. I think when we come out of Spelman, we come out of Morehouse, the AC, we think we know everything.
Mm.
Um, because we that's part of the that's part of the conditioning, right? Like we
Mm.
are, these prestigious people again. But just, and I think a lot of that, we feel like we need to know everything. We feel like
Mm.
we have to have the answers. And so anyone that's graduating, relax. Like it's okay to take, the unsexy job. It's okay to like take a break and try to figure it out. It's okay to try new things. It's okay to like, if you take a job that has nothing to do with your major, because majors
Mhm.
are constructs anyway. Like everything's transferable, especially in a liberal arts education.
Mhm.
So just relax. It's okay. You'll find the path, or go to grad school. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it though.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely relate to everything that you just said. And I think it does help to hear that. Just it's okay to calm down because we are in a space where just there is a lot of pressure in a lot of different areas. And I appreciate that advice. So,
And you guys are seeing a world we have never. I can't imagine being in college during a pandemic. Like what?
yeah.
Like so you're in survival mode in this new stage of life. So like college, that college age is a whole new stage of life. So
Hmm.
you're there in survival mode in a time when you're not supposed to be in survival mode. This is
Hmm.
exploration, this is transition. I used to say like Spelman was high school 2.0 for me. And
Hmm.
so you're supposed to be in transition space, but you guys have been in survival mode, and now you're about to be in the next iteration of survival mode when you graduate because you just out here. And so I like grace, like everybody's not going to hit a lick $1 million when you come out.
Right.
That's just what it is, especially, unless if you don't choose to go to grad school, you don't know, it's okay to just figure it out. Like the jobs that existed don't exist anymore, and new jobs will exist. So just,
Hmm.
yeah, grace.
Definitely. Yeah, that's very helpful to hear. Um, you've definitely shared a lot of words of wisdom, but did you have like a last word of wisdom for someone who is considering this job path that you have?
Um, I would say, considering the job, I think, this work that I do specifically in the nonprofit space, but also in the creative nonprofit space, requires an immense amount of authenticity, an immense amount of presence. I think one thing that I've been talking a lot about is how, like, most people show up to their jobs mentally and
Mm-hmm.
physically, right? Most people, everyone shows up physically. Most people show up only mentally and physically, but the work that I do requires that I show up mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And not a lot of leaders, not a lot of people in these spaces do that. And it takes a lot of work. And so I would encourage people to just explore, not even in this industry, in this pathway, but like as they're thinking about their own career pathways, what are the spaces where they feel like they can show up fully, physically, mentally, emotionally, and
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, and choosing careers that align with those spaces.
Hmm. Wow, that was great. Um, well, thank you for your time today. This was extremely helpful. Um, and then for more about networking, internships, and career paths, you can go to Q Career. Thank you all for watching. And until next time, I hope you have an excellent week. Bye.